Yo, Natsu here. Welcome back to part 1 of What If Deku Had Read. In the last part, ended it with Deku going back home after, well, a day of just banters with Bakugo. So, while walking home, he decided to take the same path as he did in canon. He had heard sounds and was just mindlessly walking towards where he might see heroes. So, as he's walking, he started to hear something while going under a bridge, or underpass, I should say. And turning around, suddenly from the ground, he just saw a huge amount of sludge just barreling toward him. While the sludge villain was thinking, nice, I can hide in a new body, Deku simply, through simple reaction, not even thinking, pushed out some red and burned a part of the sludge villain right off, which pushed the sludge villain away, scared because what the hell was that, and also giving Deku a tiny bit of red in exchange from burning life force. Deku's not really afraid of the sludge villain, because to him it's just, well, someone who attacked him, so it is self-defense. Of course, he won't try to kill him, but he is ready to attack. While the sludge villain thinks of what to do or how to run away, Deku uses red and basically makes a type of barrier around both of them to make sure it cannot go away. While the sludge villain is still thinking, All Might suddenly comes from the same hole in the ground. And basically just sees that, oh yeah, there's a kid who's basically making sure the sludge villain can't get away, and the sludge villain seems scared of him. Well, the kid. So, All Might just says, I'm sorry, young one. I seem to have let this one almost escape. Thank you for your help. And then he punches out the sludge villain using one of his punches, scattering it around, and basically starts putting it in bottles to make sure it doesn't, escape again. Deku helps him with that, and basically goes fanboy mode, since it is All Might, you know? All Might gives him an autograph, and Deku just asks him, because he's still a bit insecure from when he was younger, constantly being told you'll never be a hero. Once he got his powers, he did start to lose that mindset a bit, but his power is constantly on the destructive side. He destroys, he burns things. Even the electricity he makes can destroy a lot of things around him. In fact, to increase his red, the best way is to burn things away. It's all destructive. And he tells it to All Might how his power is destructive. He wants to be a hero, but he doesn't know if it's that great. He knows that Endeavor and other heroes who have this powers that are related to fire and stuff like that can control it, but his red is hard to control, and even he can get burned by it. All Might does listen and simply tell him that as long as he keeps training, as long as he keeps pushing himself in the right direction, he can be a good hero. If his powers are hard to control, or that they're a lot more destructive, then he just needs to make sure he also trained his body. so that in situations where his core could be dangerous, he can still fight physically. All Might gets ready to leave, and Deku goes to ask one last question, but All Might jumps. So Deku, without thinking, simply grabs on to All Might. This makes All Might have to land on the same building while also dropping the bottles. Deku is sorry that he grabbed on, with All Might thinking, shit, I'm almost out of time. I can't keep this up. And basically tells Deku to say that he doesn't have time, but before he can leave, he untransforms. Which, firstly, terrifies Deku for a while. And All Might basically starts to explain to him that it's okay, it's not his fault, and then tells him about his injury. Deku basically finds it, well, quite sad that, oh yeah, that's why his hero started to appear less and less. He has, well, something that makes it hard for him to keep working. While both are talking, All Might suddenly realize that the sludge villain bottles are gone, and that he has to go grab them fast. Deku feels sorry that it's his fault the bottles are gone, even though All Might tells him it's okay, so All Might runs. During that time, Bakugo, much less angry but still being a little asshole to most people, does the same thing as in canon and kicks one of the bottles, which releases the sludge villain, who starts to attack him and try to take control of his body. Deku and All Might are both just walking, All Might trying to find the sludge villain, and Deku just going towards, well, the most commotion. All Might arrives first and is terrified because a kid is in danger because he let the villain escape. Even though it wasn't fully his fault, he still feels awful. Deku arrives and sees what's going on and doesn't even think. He just goes. Compared to in canon where he feels awful until he realizes that it's fully his fault, this Deku just goes. Which does surprise All Might. Until he sees what Deku meant by his power is really destructive. What Deku does is push a lot of red out and then turns part of it into fire. Firstly blocking the way for the sludge villain, who is rightly terrified of Deku, and then tries to force Bakugo to create an explosion towards Deku. Which, remember, Bakugo sees Deku more as a rival who pisses him off than just a weakling. And he knows that his explosions don't do much to Deku. So he lets one out. The sludge villain thinks, ha, that gets him right. Right before a spear of red shots right through where its eyes are. And it starts to burn him, destroying parts of him. Deku is able to grab Bakugo's arm, who reluctantly grabs it, because he'd prefer to escape by himself. And Deku pulls him out, pushing the sludge villain away with a blast of electricity. This pushes All Might to feel something inside him. He sees how, even though Deku isn't feeling right about if his power could be used for good because of how destructive they are, he still will do anything in his power to help people. This gives All Might hope, as well as helps him push himself to use his quirk again, going back to All Might. So, because the buildings are on fire, because Deku, like he said, doesn't have great control over his power, he has minute control, but when he releases a lot, it kind of just goes everywhere. So, he readies a punch, and punch up, creating enough wind to put out the fire, but also knock the sludge villain out again. Bakugo reluctantly say thank you to Deku, and compared to in canon where Deku is in total danger, the heroes go congratulate Bakugo for holding on for so long, but also tell Deku that what he did was stupid, but that thanks to his action, no more casualties were made. Because they saw that even when Bakugo used the explosion, Deku had made a barrier behind him using his red, which blocked anything from going towards any civilians. Meaning that Deku had the situation under control, and his only objective, from their point of view, was to take Bakugo out of the equation so that the heroes could do their job correctly. So they weren't really mad at him. They just told him that, yeah, no, that was a dangerous thing to do. All Might, him, saw it a bit differently. Deku didn't do something dangerous. Deku had every way of knowing that, no, this is fine, because he already had the sludge villain in his grasp once, when he almost let the sludge villain escape. So, before Deku can go, he tells him, can we speak a bit later? And basically tells him where to meet, which is a sidewalk a bit further away. After the commotion died down and that blah blah blah, Deku went there to see. And All Might tells him that he can be a great hero. Even with his power being destructive, he does his best to control it and even make sure that the damage is minimal around him. And tells him, I'm gonna train you. He doesn't tell him yet that he's gonna give him one for all, but he does explain that for him to become a great hero and to be able to persevere and receive great power, he will need to be more physically inclined. Now, this Deku, compared to in canon, did train physically. Sorry, one of my other phones just got an Jesus Christ, my brain. Notification. And that's why my brain annoys me. Anyways. So, for the next 5 or 6 months, they go to the beach where Deku was already burning trash to train his control of his red, which All Might was already seeing a few patches where they were cleaned, which Deku explained. All Might told him that this is good, but that this time what he wants him to do is move the trash away from the beach. Because, yes, he can just burn it away, but this time he wants him to be trained physically. So, he gives him a regimen to follow, how much he wants him to be able to move from the beach, what he wants him to do in exercises, and all that. To which Deku also responds that he has another application for his quirk that could allow him to push himself further, which at first All Might doesn't want him to do. Basically telling him that pushing himself too far could break his body. To which Deku explains about him being able to heal himself. That does intrigue All Might, and Deku explains. He can put red on an injury and basically make the red absorb the damaged piece of flesh and then force it to change into the flesh itself, completely fixing any injuries, but also making sure that it's a bit stronger than before. In fact, he even trained that part to see what could happen, and he saw that over time, doing it constantly to one part, that part became stronger than the rest of his body. He has a few patches of skin that are harder to cut than the rest of his body. That intrigued All Might. All Might had an idea for an application of it, but didn't want to mention it. The application was try to put it around your entire body and basically force it to kind of swap in and out each cell over time. Deku saw that All Might had an idea but didn't want to say it, and basically pestered him over the next few days for what it was, until All Might basically accepted to explain, with Deku then saying that unless he has way more of the energy inside of him, he wouldn't even be able to do that anyways. All Might was intrigued and asked what he meant, and Deku explained. He has an amount inside of him when absorbing heat, electricity, or by burning things with a lot of life force, example plants, trees, or, part of the sludge villain. He can increase the amount of energy he has inside of him. The more heat, the more energy. The more electricity, the more energy. And the more life force, the more energy. Blah, blah, blah. And basically, when he does any of his construct or use the power, the red inside of him gets used up. It recovers over time at a rate that Deku found out is... in a single day he's gonna recover 100%. So 24 hours, fully healed. So the more he has, the more recovers, and the more he can use. But recovering his flesh in that way, or probably that of others if he were to find the right way of applicating it, it takes quite a large amount. He explained how when he was younger, a fight with Bakugo, the kid he saved, did end up with both of them being quite injured. Bakugo having a broken arm as well as a few bruises, but Deku literally having a part of him burned off. And that, using his red, he was able to slowly heal it over a few days until it was completely fine. Which was the time when he found out about that application of his ability. All Might was intrigued again, because now he thought of, wait, he might be able to use it on others, and was thinking of his own injury. But this time didn't let it show on his face or movements, so Deku didn't ask again. Because he knew that if Deku truly had, the way All Might saw it, a way of thinking that he wants to help anyone if he can. He doesn't want to put the burden on Deku of constantly hoping to help All Might doing that. So basically, he decided to try and find a way to help Deku increase his red as well. And the best way he decided to think of that is actually to get a few favors. He was able to get a place for Deku where a lot of electricity is made for him to absorb and turn into red. He told Deku he only has about 2 weeks with it before it has to be given back to the person who lent it to him. But during that time, the energy created helped him almost double the amount of red he has in his body, which All Might and the person who lent it to him were amazed. Firstly, if the place wasn't made to create electricity and not anything else, it would have costed a lot of money just to do what Deku did. In fact, All Might basically was, well, Deku presented All Might to his mom, explained that he was helping to train Deku, and they were able to place it with the school that he won't go there for the time being, basically for a quote-unquote medical problem. So Deku was basically able to just stay in that place for the entire 2 weeks, constantly absorbing as much electricity as humanly possible for him. This greatly helped him, and basically he didn't really miss school too much because he still did the works and still read books about stuff. And he was able to train physically at the same time. Basically, the way they did it was by putting multiple cords to the outlets of the electrical things with a special item made for Deku, where they could plug that all onto the back of them. Basically, think of it like a backpack with places to plug, and all of that electricity was simply pushed through his back, where he was basically constantly using red on it to absorb it. At first it was extremely uncomfortable, but as he got used to it, he was able to tolerate it, and he was basically training at the same time. So, over the course of, everything that was happening, until 8 months later, not just 6 months, like All Might was thinking at first, because Deku also decided to try what All Might had inadvertently told him. Basically use red around his body to slowly transform more red into his body, which was really fucking hard over time. But he got used to it. His body didn't grow too much in strength since, let's say he wanted to make his body just 1% more powerful or stronger or harder. He would need to transform to do that to his entire body, like burn it all up over time, changing every single cell. He'd need to do it about 1,000 times. If they were injured, now that's a bit different. If the cells are injured, it remakes them stronger much faster, but it still takes time. That it would only make the process like half as fast. So didn't really change nothing. But he still tried it until he saw that, yeah, no, it was just not really good. He did put in theory that if he actually simply recreated a new body instead of just making his cells stronger by destroying them and just reforming them by, oh, I don't know, creating the entire body out of red and then making sure that the cells were massively harder, that would make a stronger body. But he doesn't even know if he could do something like that, and he doesn't want to kill himself, so he's just gonna pass. So, after 8 consecutive months of training, the beach has been cleaned a while back, so now it was literally just physical training with weights, things like that. All Might even sent him at a place where a building was going to be destroyed to basically just allow Deku to move all the heavy things by himself, breaking down the building. Of course, he didn't do that for too long. Basically, it was like, yeah, the building's broken down. Move every big pieces of metal out of the way. Basically, just help the people. Things like that, basically. So, after the 8 months, All Might finally told him that the quirk he has is called One for All, and that it's a quirk that can be passed down, explaining that the original one uh, basically was given to him by his greatest, well, not by him, to him, but basically was created by accident by the greatest villain, by giving a quirk to his brother, which started the quirk, passing it down to people, and All Might was the 8th. So Deku will be the 9th. Deku at first doesn't want to take it, but then All Might explained with his injury, he can keep it using it less and less over time. And for it to not disappear or go away, it needs to be passed down to someone. And now he wants to pass it down to Deku. I'm gonna end it here. Hope you liked it. Leave comments if you want to ask questions for other what ifs, if you want to give ideas, things like that. Anyways, Natsu out!